So, Amy, tell me about kind of hope-centered parenting. What's your favorite kind of story about hope-centered parenting?
I would love to tell you a story. I have lots of them, but one of my favorites took place not that long ago when we were doing a class with sweet moms who are being reunified with their children at Pearl
Yeah.
Circle of Care. And great community partner with amazing staff members. And one of the moms, we were able to reframe some behaviors in her young child. So she has a toddler, and everyone loves to use the language of like terrible twos. It makes me crazy. I have 4 kids, we can get into that later,
Yeah.
but, they're all just little problem solvers,
Okay.
really. They're all just curious and
Mm,
trying to figure out their world. So we're talking about, something that she had perceived as just kind of bad behavior, and her child was
okay.
misbehaving.
Mm,
And so when we really talked through it and we tried to put her into that child's little brain and
yeah.
think, okay, so your child was just wanting a cookie that was on the counter, and they were just pulling a chair over to get to that cookie. So that was their goal,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get to that
Yeah.
cookie.
Yeah.
They were smart enough to figure out a pathway to their goal, and we can celebrate that, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that as parents, we're not going to redirect and we're not going to set boundaries, but it also doesn't mean that we have to perceive things
Okay.
as bad behavior or misbehaving
Hmm.
or intentionally trying to disobey us or make us have
Yeah.
a bad day, when we really can reframe it through this lens of hope and recognize that everyone has goals in life,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah.
has goals. We have them whether we realize we
Hmm.
have them or not. So sometimes we're pursuing things that are probably not healthy goals that we
Yeah.
didn't even think about.
Hmm.
But even our kids are
Yeah.
pursuing goals every day.
Okay.
And so it's a great opportunity to really start embedding that language of hope with them
Okay. Okay.
and start reframing behaviors. Because
Hmm.
so many times in life, whether it's me encountering another adult and bringing in my own perceptions, and maybe I get offended. Well, how beautiful if we really can reframe things in our mind
Yeah.
and really try to imagine
Mm.
that we could understand and have a really fruitful conversation
Yeah.
if I could just reframe for a moment what's going on
Okay.
here and use this framework of the science of hope, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah. Yeah.
really can pervade every aspect of our life.
Yeah.
And it's not it's not pretending that everything around me is great, right?
Hmm.
That's like a false
Yeah.
optimism,
Okay.
and that's an emotion. So we can talk a little bit about what hope is and get into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love working with parents because in this particular mom, she really had never had anyone walk
Hmm.
through that with her. And
Okay.
it seems so obvious to some of us
Hmm.
who have parented.
Yeah.
And she literally started crying and she said, I never thought about
Mm.
the fact that my child isn't willfully disobeying me all the time and trying to make me have a hard day.
Yes.
I really had never thought about the fact they are just trying to explore their world and they're learning and they're growing. And I can say, I'm proud of you for thinking of a great way
That's
to get
right.
to that cookie while also saying, but mom said it's not time for that. And after we eat dinner, then you
Yeah.
can have your cookie.
Yes. Yes.
Like
Yes.
we can still be the parent, we can still set boundaries, and we can still acknowledge that our kids are working really hard a lot
Yeah.
of the time.
I like the little problem solvers, resourceful humans. So that's fun. Well, as you can tell, this interview with Emerson of Hope-Driven Parenting is a great one. She talks about the science of hope and how this is birthed and experienced in so many ways. Then we talk about what it means for to be a hope-driven parent and some of the work that she does, and then how she got into it and her story of faith and where God's been in the mix and just been exciting to kind of see this journey take place. And so I think it's so important as a dad. I learned a ton. I think you're going to learn a ton about hope, about being a good parent. Even if you're not a parent, you know people who are parents, and you might think of somebody this is good for. And so listen to this, share this along, and we are excited to hear this conversation with Amy Emerson on the Tulsa Neighbor Podcast. So
Yeah.
so let's start with kind of we got this book Science of Hope.
Yes.
Some people have read the book Science of Hope, but probably a lot of people haven't really. When they think about hope, they think about, oh, I hope that my favorite team wins, or I hope I get a good parking spot. But that's not really the science of hope. So kind of take what is the basics of kind of the science of hope and how did this kind of hope oriented worldview. So we'll start with hope and then we'll go into hope parenting. How about
Okay, that sounds
that?
perfect. So, I have to do a shout out to my colleague, Dr. Chan Hellman. A lot of people don't realize he's right here in
Yeah.
town. He
Hmm.
works at 41st and Yale. So, he's an amazing Tulsa resource that we have. And he's traveling the world right now, spreading this message of hope. He's really a hope ambassador and this incredible scientist. So, it's really wise that we start with what the real definition of hope is in a
Okay.
scientific framework. So, it's the belief that tomorrow can be better than today,
Okay.
which would be optimism, except for this last part, and that we have the power to make it so.
Okay.
That's the part that's really important for
Hmm.
people to understand
Yeah.
is that there's always a step we can take, even if it's changing the way we are thinking
Okay.
about a problem
Yeah.
we're trying
Yeah.
to solve. There's always something that we can do that
Hmm.
gives us power, that gives us agency or
Yeah.
ownership.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where it becomes really a mindset and not just an emotion like optimism. So you're right. We use it all the time. And so sometimes I have to kind of level set with people and say, okay, wait a minute. I'm talking about the science of hope. You're right now talking about an emotion that is labeled as hope, but it's really made up of three components. And this science goes back to a guy named Snyder, been around for 50 plus
Hmm.
years, and over 2,000 studies have
Amazing.
been
Yeah.
done using the science of hope and have shown time and again that it's the best predictor of future well being.
Okay.
So when we're thinking about
Yeah.
like whether it's me individually or me within community, like how do I help this community get better? How do I make things better around me? I think using the science of hope to do that is hugely powerful. Lots of studies in the world of medicine, people healing faster, people needing less pain medicine, spending fewer days in the hospital, and even with our teens, like decreased depression, anxiety, decreased suicidality. So lots of ramifications. Three simple components. And this is why everybody can be a
Okay.
purveyor of
So
hope.
let me. So hope is the belief that today or tomorrow can be better than today,
Tomorrow can be better than today.
and that we have the agency, the power to impact that change. So,
Absolutely.
okay. All right. So tell us the three
Absolutely.
components.
Okay, number 1, goal setting.
Yeah.
We've referenced already, we all have goals whether we realize it or don't realize it. Sometimes these are avoidance goals, like we're wanting something not to
Okay.
happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So think about I have a college kid right now. An avoidance goal was I hope I don't fail this test,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
As a
Yeah. Yeah.
parent, I'm
Hmm.
like, "No, let's flip that, right? Let's come from what do we want to achieve? Achievement goals. So, what do you think you can make on this test? And it may not be 100, right? Like,
Yeah.
realistically, what is your goal? Do you want to make a B on this
Okay.
test? Because it's a hard class, and that's fair where you
Yeah.
study hard. So, goal setting, hugely
Good.
important. And that's really hard for people who are living in trauma
Hmm.
to have the space to do that, to really
Yeah. Yeah.
think
Yeah. You have
beyond
to use. You
going
visually
now
imagine. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
imagine,
Yeah. Yeah.
have to be able to imagine.
Mhm.
So we can get into that a little bit when it comes to parenting.
Yep.
Just helping kids use their imagination is a
Mhm.
huge tool. So goal setting, pathways thinking,
Yeah.
so being able to identify more than one way to
Okay.
achieve your goal.
Yep. Yep.
So I always liken that to plugging an address in your Google Maps.
Mm.
And it's going to give you a quickest route. It's going to give you a route without an interstate. You know, you can
Mhm.
choose different ways to get there.
Yeah.
But we use pathways thinking all the time when we're driving somewhere. So helping ourselves learn to use that pathways thinking
Yeah.
in other areas of our life can be important.
Well, it makes sense because, like, yeah, so many times it feels like, okay, there's either this or this. They have this like double bind, and it's like, no, no, no. There's,
Always another way.
yeah, there has to be some
Always
other way to
another
be
way.
thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the third component is that agency that we talked about.
Okay.
And that's just our sometimes we use the word willpower, our ability to see our role in this, to know that we have the power. And I would say to me, that component is something that I think I'm a helper, and sometimes I forget how important that component is. And the more I learn about people and the more I learn about what the research shows us, I think that's the most important component
Okay.
that we often take from people.
Mm.
Because a lot of times in helping others, we kind of become the carrier of the person to the place we
Okay.
want them
Yeah.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
be. instead of equipping them, spending our energy like, how do I better equip you? How do I listen
Yeah.
to you? How do I hear what your goals are? And then how can I help you move to that next place
Okay.
in your life that you want to be
Mhm.
instead of just doing it for you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, not removing agency from people is really important.
Okay.
And also, as a parent, we do that really well. So,
Yeah, yeah,
agency, I can't overstate enough how important it is to really understand
yeah,
and we can all, improve people's willpower. We can all build people's willpower around us
yeah.
just by, um by helping them, by supporting them, by encouraging them, by helping them with pathways, but to not remove it. There's a
Mhm.
big difference in that, right?
Yeah, yeah, I do think that. Yeah, okay, I see a goal. Okay, yeah, there's a pathway, but yeah, like, no, I can't do this for you. You have to walk the road.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you've gotta be able to do that. And we'll talk a little more about the parenting side of things, but it's like, you probably have more experience, but like we can become so protective as parents.
yeah,
We don't want
yeah,
something bad to happen to you.
yeah,
That I heard somebody say, there's helicopter parents that like kind of hover around, but
yeah.
then there's lawnmower
Lot
there
more
for
parents. Yeah,
who paved the way so that their parents,
yeah,
their kids don't have any struggles. And it's like the struggles are part of what is it? But that's ahead. So okay, so Dr.
yeah,
Hellman,
yeah,
uh,
Dr. Hellman.
he did this research, kind of wrote this book
Yeah.
on hope, and then it's kind of like branched out, particularly here in Oklahoma, but other places as well. Like there's a Hope Center at OU, is that right?
There is a
And so and then
resource center. Yep.
there's all of these different branches that we have. So kind of give us a little bit of that history of how what was the pathway, if you will,
Yeah,
for
I'll
hope
break
to
that.
cause
I'll tell you what.
prejudice.
So about 7 years, when Governor Stitt was elected, his wife, Sarah Stitt, was, really thinking about what kind of impact she might can make in her role, and, she has lived a very hard life full of trauma. She shares very openly, very transparently, and she was very interested in ACEs and what trauma does to us as humans, and, she met up with Dr. Hellman because it's really important to spread awareness about ACEs or adverse childhood
Mhm.
experiences. Um, but what she started realizing is that her story was actually one of utilizing the science of hope
Okay.
without necessarily knowing that's
Mhm.
what it was
Yeah,
or
yeah.
calling it the words. And so she really saw the power in that. So she and Dr. Hellman started working together to really build out some training programs
Okay.
just for our state
Yeah.
here in Oklahoma. A lot of people who work for the state, especially in child welfare and juvenile justice. And then from that, really have heard from other states that have wanted to do the same. What we found in our state, based on his research, is that it actually decreased uh, turnover in staff, which was really important
Mm.
when you're working with state agency and increased, again, well being of people who were working in really hard situations. And so that's how it really started growing within our state.
Okay.
And
It feels like there's kind of like a double impact, right? So if I'm training you on how to, you're a case manager, and I'm training you how to help your client with hope. Meanwhile, you're like, well, I have a goal. I want this person to make my life easier, right? Or I want to do this thing in my personal life. So it's got a double boost because you're coaching them and they're able to experience it for their own being. That makes a lot of sense
you
to me.
just nailed it. You
Okay.
just nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So really you have to understand it and utilize it for yourself before
Mhm.
you can share it with someone else,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so the way that spills out then to like some of our young people who might be juvenile justice involved is really helping them identify like what are your academic goals, right?
Mhm.
Do you want to work on a GED? Do you want to work on some life skills? Do you want to work on your driver's license, right? What are the
Yeah.
things we can help you work on? And just helping them set goals while we are working with
Okay.
them,
Yeah.
right? And also not telling them, I want you to get your high school diploma.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it
yeah.
not fitting everyone into this one pathway, but really listening to people. And again, what is your goal? How do I listen to you? And how can we as a state help provide for some of that? And so then I was serving on the board of that nonprofit, and what we kept hearing from people was, but what do I do in my own life? What are actionable things that we can do? Like as a parent, what does that look like? And then a colleague of mine has built out Hope Driven Coaching.
Okay.
So he works with a lot of coaches from YMCA volunteer coaches all the way to college level. coaches and
Okay.
just helping their teams. I mean, when you think about where a lot of our children are learning a lot of life lessons,
Oh, absolutely.
it's being on a team,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And there are really, really incredible ways that coaches impact kids because we
Mhm.
hear those stories over and over
Yeah,
again. And then there can be some not so beneficial ways,
yeah.
if we're not really thinking about, hey, this kid may be coming to me from a lot of trauma, a really hard family situation,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I'm expecting this from them, and maybe I can help if I just understand better
Mhm.
where they're coming from.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it also takes into account really understanding what people have been through
Okay.
when you're visiting with them, when you're listening to them, because the pathways that they are
Mhm.
going to have in their mind as ways to get them towards their
Mhm.
goals are a lot of times going to come from what their life experiences are.
Yeah,
And so one lesson that we always try to teach people is that even people can be pathways, right? Like my friends know if you are stuck in a problem, call me. I love to be a problem solver and
mhm.
I can help even think through like, hey,
Yeah.
have you thought about this? What do you think about this idea? Or
Mhm.
I know about this organization, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
even cultivating strong friendships and
yeah,
relationships and
yeah,
community in our life,
yeah, yeah.
that's a life skill that plays into the science.
And that makes sense to me. There's a, I don't know, there's a resource helping without earning. I don't know if you,
Yes.
and he talked about, yeah,
Fantastic.
poverty is a like a lack of access to resources and people, right? Is
Yes.
primarily that
Yeah.
resource. That yeah, it's like, oh gosh, I don't even know there. But if you don't know any lawyers and you need a lawyer, right? Right,
Right.
you got to have somebody who knows somebody to get there,
Exactly.
in that way. So yeah, yeah, all that it does. And I think that again, as I think about if all I've ever done is my son just started driving, he turned 16, I guess in October, but, he doesn't know Tulsa.
Yeah.
He knows how to put in the address in his
Yeah.
GPS, and
Yeah.
he knows to just go there.
And if the
But
road is closed, what do
yeah.
we do?
Well, yeah, and then the GPS would say go to
Yeah.
Zipper Road,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
I
Yeah.
couldn't ask him to draw a mental map of
Yeah.
Tulsa. Like he
Yeah.
could lay out the grids. I tried to, okay, there's harbors and this. Yeah, I mean, he kind of tried to do some of those, but those
Yeah.
things haven't stuck. But like I have this mental map of Tulsa, right? And I know these like side, okay, if you go past Bishop Kelly on 36, I mean, there's just different
Yeah.
ways that you just like I know how to get from here to there. And it would seem like that like trauma and other times just this lack of imagination is there's this lack of knowledge
Mhm.
pathways and
Mhm.
it's like oh wait there are if this road is closed there are 15 ways to get there in this grid that is Tulsa and then with our all the stuff but to not have those
Yeah.
no I ran up to 40 bursts and something happened
Yeah.
I was I don't know what to get it
And then what does that do to your brain, right?
Yeah.
It throws you into panic, right? It
Mhm.
throws you into that
Yeah.
anxiety overload. And so when we are not providing our kids and we're not thinking ahead, this is another big part.
Mhm.
When you are talking with kids, especially or others, anyone, about pathways, you also want to acknowledge like barriers, right?
Yeah.
If you're setting your kid up for failure, if you say, okay, right now, take the creek out down to South BA at 5 o'clock,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
you would tell him, you know what, lanes are closed. You might want to look at an alternative pathway because if you go that one way and you can't make it happen, what do? You get really frustrated. You're running late to your job interview. You get overwhelmed. Your brain, I love brain science. At the end of the day, I consider myself a scientist and I love the brain. It's my favorite organ. So what do? We
Mhm.
all go to that primitive part of our brain
Yeah, yeah.
that's emotionally driven,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
then we're just panic, panic, panic. And then we make one bad decision after another bad decision, right?
Yeah.
Instead of staying in that frontal part of our
Mhm.
brain where we really use that executive function. And so if I had set my kid up for a potential barrier,
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm sending you to take your driving test.
Yeah, yeah.
You might fail, right? Like, I don't think
Mhm.
you will. We've prepared you, talk all the positive talk. And then plan C, what if you fail?
Yeah.
Hey, no big deal. We go back the next day. So, heaven forbid, they run a red light, whatever happens, right? And then they're not just like, oh, my world is crushed. This is the end of it all. I failed my driving test. In their brain, they're like, well, I knew that was a possibility, but I
Yeah.
also know that's not the end of the road,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
know exactly what I'm going to do tomorrow to fix that, to
Yeah.
do it differently. You know?
Yeah, 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 and so, yeah, that kinda takes again that either or thinking. Either I pass or I fail, and there's, it's like, "Well, no." This is not the end.
Not the end of the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We could be able to adjust. So let's kind of then let's dig into hope centered parenting.
Okay.
So it's one of those hope centered branches
Yeah.
that came out. How did you get connected? What did that kind of how did it get take life?
Well, fun fact, Chan Hellman and I actually were colleagues back at OU Schusterman 20 plus years ago.
Okay, okay.
So that's fun. So I feel like this has been a really cool journey that the Lord has just brought us back together here
Cool.
20 years later in a different capacity. But both doing some of the things that we were doing even way back then, which is
Mhm,
working with people, trying to understand people better and
mhm,
trying to pool resources to support one another. So when we realized that there was really a need for this framework to
yeah,
be kind of broken down and made simple and kind of digestible for
mhm,
parents who are walking through hard stuff, we really started thinking, okay, this hasn't really been done before. How do we do this? And so we tried to look at different modalities and we created social media. So we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. We have a curriculum that we've written that
okay,
we've run classes several times here in town. We've done several hope-driven parenting workshops
okay,
and always open to partnering with people
yeah,
to host one of those to go there and talk to their parents, equip them. We go all over the state. We were in Ponca City a few months ago. We'll be doing a talk with the people in the state of Washington in a few weeks. So we really, when we
okay,
get the call, we try to go. And so I can talk to people in as little as an hour and a half, up to 6-week course of
okay.
really walking it out with
Mhm.
parents and walking through the goal setting and having them kind of
Yeah, yeah,
walk through worksheets and put things into practice.
okay.
So different ways that we're
Mhm.
able to kind of show up and meet people where they are and provide for their needs in that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some of it is just like seed planting, right? Social media or other social stuff or being
Yes.
something like this. You're trying to get the word out, trying to help people say,
Absolutely.
oh, like, well, I've got I'm about 16-year-old, 13-year-old. So,
Yeah.
my 13-year-old, I can help them think through, okay, this is the goal. This is the pathway. What is your part, in this? Who do you want to become? What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Okay. That's again, the simplicity of it's part of its beauty. But then sometimes it is that like, oh man, especially if they're dealing with trauma or other
Yeah.
such challenges where, um, yeah, they have to okay, there's some significant barriers, whether it be an imagination. I can't even imagine what a goal would
Right.
be. Halfway, I only see one way, or this agency
Right.
of like, what do I
Right.
can't do this. I break
Right.
me down so much. So where how do you
Right.
so so yeah, take us through a situation with somebody if there's somebody there who's dealt with the kid with trauma
Yeah.
and they struggle with agency.
Yeah. Yeah.
What how do you help the kid to see they have agency when they felt like they don't have any control, they don't have any agency?
It's such a problem right now. I hear from a lot of parents. So somebody listening may say, "Yeah, that's it. That's where we are right now." Of these teenagers who are feeling really overwhelmed with the hardness of the world around them right
Mhm.
now, right? There's a lot that we could dwell on that can really drain us. What we know also is that use of social media and being on digital electronics, just filling their days with a lot of that. It's not good for the brain. So we know there's actually science of why that's draining
Yeah,
their
yeah.
willpower. So to parents, I say number one, let's take an inventory of where we are, right?
Okay.
We have to do a pulse check. And when we talk about hope, there's actually a free screening device. You can just type in on the computer like hope score and it'll take you to the screener and it'll tell you what your hope score is. There's one for children too,
Mm.
down to like 9 years old,
Okay.
although I think you can use it younger
Okay.
than that. So someone could find out what theirs or their teen's hope score is right now.
Okay.
And the cool thing is that is not something that is going to stay that way forever. That actually can change in as little as an hour when we start teaching people and telling people what the tenets of hope are. We see their hope scores start improving just knowing that this can happen. There
Okay.
is, but maybe there's something better that I can do,
Mm.
right? Maybe they don't totally believe us. They're just like, okay, I'm willing to try. And so I say, do a pulse check. Let's do an inventory of like what are the ways that our willpower or our agency is being drained that we may not even realize
Okay.
it.
Okay.
What trauma
Mhm.
might we be living in? Sometimes you can't just get out of it. It's not that simple, but sometimes
Yeah. Yeah.
there are things that we can do to say, you know what? I'm going to start taking these steps. And that in and of itself, to walk out of trauma, that's a goal, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
some patterns that you've been living with. And then what we try to do with parents is it requires conversations with their children. It requires understanding their children, but really trying to get a good feel. What is your child's goal? Right? What is their goal? Because as parents, I have 3 teenagers and 1 20-year-old. So we're really good at making assumptions about what we think their goal should be
Yeah.
or telling them what their goal should
Yeah,
be,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
have a kiddo in college. He's already changed his major, right? So he went there. We thought we knew what was going to be great for him. He's already re-goaled when it comes to his
Mhm.
major.
Okay.
So as a parent, I could get frustrated. I could say, but we did that Berkman inventory and it told us that you would be really good at that. Or I could say, you know what? I love that you're going to explore classes and they point you in a different
Yeah,
direction,
yeah, yeah.
right? Tell me about it. Tell me your reasoning. Why are we doing this? But with that kiddo who's in this really deep space right now, to say like, I want you to start hanging out with your friends tomorrow, and I want you to start doing that may be unrealistic. But what's one tiny step that they can identify? One tiny goal and it may seem insignificant to us, but to them it could be really big.
Mhm.
And there's always something we can celebrate in each
Okay,
other.
okay.
Always. There's
Mhm.
always something we can celebrate. So helping them identify a goal that is so short term, so easily accomplished. And again, it can be an avoidance goal,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It can be, I've worked with friends who are struggling with depression even getting out of bed and getting dressed, right? To some of us, that is a low bar, but
Yeah.
to some of us,
Mhm.
that one
Yeah, it's one more
action
thing.
can indicate, you know what, I trust you. Let's get dressed today. And then we just celebrate the mess out of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Celebrating each other actually releases dopamine in the brain,
Mhm.
which is a feel good
Yeah,
chemical.
yeah.
And so the brain, the way we are built as humans, and I love this because it's God's design, the way we are built is the more we do something, the better we get at it. And the better we get at it, the more we want to do it. So
Yeah.
it's this automatic feedback loop
Mhm.
that just the act of doing it, and especially when someone can celebrate that with us,
Yeah.
can help us do it again. And it's not quite as hard the next time.
Okay. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we really use that brain science to help us like
Mhm.
start creating these little feedback loops in the brain. And we actually start changing the chemical makeup of our brain,
Okay.
which is
Okay.
pretty astounding to
Yeah,
me
yeah.
that we actually have the ability to change the way our brains function.
Mhm.
We had the ability to change the framework of our brains. And again, it's not emotions because all of us cycle through emotions,
Mhm.
right? When something horrible happens to me, I'm sad about it, right? But
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that I'm without hope,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So if I'm operating within this framework of knowing tomorrow can be better, I can feel all the emotions. It doesn't mean that I don't get down. It doesn't mean that I don't have days that I may have a lower hope score. But what it means is that I know that there are actions I can take, and some of them are can be very programmed, almost like automatic actions that I know if I'm having a down day,
Mhm.
I'll tell you, I get outside more.
Okay. Yeah,
I
yeah.
I know like if I'm just kind of like, all this stuff seems really heavy and I'm struggling and turn the social media off, delete it from my phone and go for walks
Go.
outside,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So literally I have things I know in my world I can do that are going to boost my willpower.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge also is just knowing ourselves well enough to
Mhm.
know like what
Yeah.
are those things? Is it listening to praise and worship music? Is it, hanging out grabbing coffee with a friend?
Yeah, yeah.
So when it comes to doing hope scores, I always ask people, I'm like, if you're having a bad day, who is that person you can call? And you
Yes.
just know you're going to feel
Yeah.
better. I guarantee you they have a high hope score, right? And
Yeah.
that's how they live life. And it just rubs off on us, which is a great reminder that we can be that high hope person. We
Yeah.
can be that one call, right? That
Yeah,
people want to
yeah.
grab coffee,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. 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 That we could be those people. There's a guy I followed. His name's Steve Cass. I don't know if you've ever come across Steve
No.
Cass. He's
Okay.
great. He has a podcast called Being Human. It's absolutely fantastic. You love it. He has a book called Managing Leadership Anxiety, which is one of the like key books of my entire life. But he
Okay, I
talks
love when I
about
hear about a new podcast.
he talks about one of the things is he calls it a life giving list.
That's
And,
good.
and some of them could be done in 5 minutes. So he loves to,
Yeah.
he loves to watch, comedians on YouTube. And so it's like, man, so I mean, that's really what you have is you have a like, give me lists. Okay, it's doing coffee, it's getting outside. And so it's like, but if you're not doing anything for your life, getting lists, then, and sometimes it's bigger stuff, right? It's going to the mountains and beach or whatever it is.
Right.
Like, gosh, no wonder I'm not having some of these things. And to know, I mean, I think there's a level of maturity that we can have sometimes as adults, and
Mhm.
we can help with it's our kids. I think of our youngest, he's better than he used to be, but he used to be. It's like, man, he's cranky. Man, he's cranky. It was like, oh, he's hungry.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
do
Exactly.
like we learned that it was
Exactly.
just like, okay,
Yeah.
you need food. You don't need anything else yet.
Yeah.
Like you need
Yeah.
heat.
Yes. That is such a good example. And, we do. We have a great list that with parents, we're always working through like, talk to me about your child's sleep. Talk to me about how they're eating and adding some snacks, right? Talk to me about whether they're playing outside. Um, but as parents, we also have the power as our kids are getting older to start saying things like, hey, did you realize, because when you're 8, it's really hard to be self-aware, but when your parents are helping you in that way, I think these are skills we just assume kids develop on their own,
Yeah.
and it's not always the case. Some kids need a little more help than others when we say, "Hey, did you realize when you're hanging out with that one person, you always it just tends to, like, bring you down, And maybe we're not trying to insert or change or make them not be friends with that person, but we're planting those seeds of self-awareness of, like, "Did you realize that the people you hang out with can actually change your mood? And
Yeah.
what do you think would happen if you hung out a little more with this group that seemed you always come in bubbly and happy, right? Like, versus this other that always you're always coming in like, huh, I think, I need to get different clothes or maybe I'm too fat or whatever. Like, where are these ideas coming from? Yeah, you just start asking these well-designed questions as a parent, especially teenagers, right? Because we can't tell them anything. And then they start really thinking about these things internally.
Yeah, 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 and you're training them
Yeah.
how to do that. Um, and so I've got lots of questions, but I'm really curious about reading another book right now, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. Have you read that one?
No, I need to come to you for my noble. So I love reading these books.
But I mean, there are parents, there are people who did not grow up with
Right.
parents who had these skills. They were negligent, they were abusive, they were just busy. I mean, that's like one
Right.
thing, and I had good parents, but like one thing I realized, being a parent, is like, oh man, my parents were living their own story in their own life, not
Yes.
just functioning
Yes.
as my parent. They had all these other components you don't really learn about. Um, and so for these parents, so what you try to do with hope centered parenting is whether it be a great parent or a parent who's forced to become a better parent, right?
Yeah.
They're in a
Yeah.
program or something like that where they have a level of force to be a better parent. They may not have had this model. What are some of the like basic things that because you're trying to teach them how to have hope and how to implant hope into others. So if I brought a sampling of my parents here and I said, all right, Amy, talk to them, you have you have 5 minutes to get them
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
at least get
Peer
something.
pressure, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah.
Change their lives in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
What are some of the what is that first thing that you just are going to?
I think one thing that I try to go to, especially when I'm working with parents who are in a really hard space, is number one, our kids are their capacity for forgiveness is off the charts. Like, it gives me chills when I think about it because as children, we yearn, we want so much for that relationship with our parents. And even when parents mess up and make mistakes, because guess what? We all do, right? It's the great equalizer. Nobody's perfect in this space. When we can acknowledge that we messed up and that we want to do better, our kids, 9 times out of 10, are the first to open their arms wide open and give us another shot. And in fact, just a parent being willing to do that is instilling a huge lesson in their children, right? Just them saying, I'm sorry, I messed up. I have to do that all the time, right? Like if we're being honest, we're still figuring these things out as we go.
Yeah.
And even when we know better, sometimes we still raise our voice or we still do the thing that we're like, I'm not going to do that today. But taking that moment just to press pause and just to say, you know what? I actually have all the power right now in this relationship to totally change the tone.
Yeah.
I can be the one that can press pause, that can take a deep breath, that can model for my child. I messed up. I'm sorry. Can we do this again? Can I restart? Can you forgive me? And we actually walk through like a finger, 5 finger model for just asking for apologies so that there's like this little system that we can even have in
Okay,
place that
5 finger
reaches all.
model.
Okay,
Tell me
so
this one.
let me, so I'm sorry for is something that we've done in my house. So I'm sorry for. So in my house, even when they're like little bitty, they couldn't just say, "Oh, sorry," and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
move on. It's like I want acknowledgement of what we've done. So I'm sorry. So when they're little, I'm literally saying the words, and they repeat after me.
You're modeling. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
modeling it
having
for
that.
them. That's a
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
yes. So I'm sorry for hitting you with that stick.
Yeah.
Okay, why are you sorry? I know that that hurt you,
Yeah.
right? Um, I should have
Mm.
instead I should have instead told you that was my cookie
Okay.
instead of just hitting you
Mhm.
with
Yeah,
this
yeah,
stick,
yeah.
right? Um, Next time I will
Okay, okay.
use my words,
Yeah,
whatever it
yeah, yeah.
is. And actually the fourth finger, that was this to me. Okay, fourth finger is asking, will you forgive me?
Okay.
Which is super hard. That
Yeah.
is
Because
really
yeah.
that and as a parent, this is okay, window into my car rides. We spend a lot of time in the car. So with my daughter, it just became our thing when I would have to apologize to her often. We might be in the car. And I would just reach my hand back and I would say, "Hey, will you forgive me? I could have said that differently."
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes she would just take my hand and she wouldn't say yes. And that hurts, but it's okay.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
right? And then the fifth for us is saying a prayer.
Okay.
Because in our family, we're a family of faith and we firmly believe that the Lord forgives everything, right? There's always a second chance. And so we're just like, let's just pray. Let's just take it to the Lord real quick, give it to him, and then it's gone, right? And it doesn't mean the consequences are gone,
Yeah.
but it does mean you're forgiven,
Yeah.
right? And so I really wanted to model for my kids, like walking through that acknowledgement of what they've done, what they could do better, asking straight out, do you forgive me? And then, okay, what are we modeling on earth is what the Lord did for us. Okay, so let's see.
Let me see if I can do it. I'm
Okay.
sorry for, or I'm sorry for you with this day. Okay. This is
Okay. Um, why
why
what
I
you
did you with
did.
the stick
I
because
know it hurt. I
yeah,
know it hurt you
I
for
know it
what you
hurt you.
did.
So there's a I'm sorry. There's an acknowledgement of what
Yes.
pain.
Yes.
Um,
Next time I will.
Next time I will.
Will you forgive me?
Will you forgive me?
And then we say a prayer in our
Okay.
order.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that is often a place I start with parents, just to zoom back out, because often parents are coming to me in a really hard place and they're carrying a ton of guilt
Mhm.
because we're really good at parents and remembering all the things that we
Yeah.
wish we had done
Yeah. Yeah.
better.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I try to get parents just like lay the guilt down
Mhm.
because we can never parent well when we're just
Yeah.
laden with that, right? When our backs are bent over and we're carrying all this stuff, we have to take that off. We have to acknowledge we could have done better, whatever. It may be on a daily basis. It may be something really big, right? It may be something that required a rupture in relationship. And maybe child hasn't even been living with you. It's never too late. There's a story of a judge who was utilizing the science of hope in the courtroom, and she actually had to terminate parental rights of someone,
Mm.
which is the hardest thing I can ever
Yeah.
imagine happening. And she said, now's the opportunity for you to work on yourself and become the kind of adult that your adult child will want to have a relationship with. So again, this idea of it's never over. It's never game over.
Yeah.
It can always start over. We can always apologize and work on ourselves and be better this next time.
Yeah. So he laid out a potential goal. It's up to her, right, to choose. Okay, I adopt that goal. What are my pathways to become that adult that to become that person that my adult child would want to be around? And then, yeah, agency. What can I do to
Yeah.
build that in there? So I do. I mean, and I want to kind of take a kind of a big view of our state. So we're 48th in education. We're first in domestic violence, right? That is not what we want to,
Not
not
the
what we want to
dyad for
do.
success. Yeah.
Um, so I'm going to kind of zoom in on this domestic violence piece a little bit. And how does hope-centered parenting address and I heard somebody say, like, not only is Oklahoma number one, but Tulsa is number one in Oklahoma. So how does hope-centered parenting enter into this domestic violence culture, which I hate to say,
Mhm.
that is present in our state?
Mm.
Where did these things intersect, and how is
Mhm.
this helping us to solve
Mhm.
this terrible problem that we're in?
Mhm.
And obviously, domestic violence could be a lot of different things, right, in households. But I feel like probably, you know, parents and spouses and all sorts of other stuff where I want to keep base.
Right, right, right. Um, okay, so I would say this in defense of almost all parents. So I've worked with a lot of parents for a lot of years. I'm a pediatrician by training. Um, Except in cases of mental illness and drug abuse, every parent I encounter wants to be the best parent they can be for their child.
Okay.
So I always look at it from that perspective. It is really hard to break cycles that we
Mhm.
have lived through.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
almost always what we see is these are perpetuated
Yeah.
cycles,
Yep,
right?
yep,
And you have to know there's a different way
yep.
before you can choose that different way,
Yep,
right?
yep, yep.
And so I think acknowledging that the coping mechanisms that this adult I'm talking to is using,
Mm.
that's just something that was done to them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And so trying to see this person as the little person they were who had these things done to them that they are now repeating because they've never seen a different way. I think that's important and
Okay.
just bringing humanity to it.
Mm.
And then um, helping them to, again, it comes back a lot of times to the trauma that they're living in, the chaos that may be surrounding them, and helping them to start see what they can control as far as removal of these things,
Mhm.
these pieces of chaos. Um, and again, coming back to that frontal lobe. So I use a little hand gesture with
Yeah.
my kids and sometimes even with adults because sometimes we're very concrete
Yes,
thinkers.
yes, yes.
It's important to remember, even into our early teens, we're very concrete thinkers.
Mhm.
And so when my kids are kind of going into that emotional state,
Yeah.
which is where we often see the abuse come, right? Like we just get so revved up
Yeah.
and we're using again that primal part of our brain that's emotionally driven. So I'll just hold this up because my words are not heard, right? Like
Oh.
when we talk to that, you should blah blah blah. It's just like the peanuts teacher, right?
Yeah,
Wah,
yeah,
wah,
yeah,
wah,
yeah.
wah, wah, wah. So sometimes having emotion that I can use with someone, adult and child, to just say, hey, hey, look, okay, and reminding them like you actually have control right now to do these things. What are the things that we've talked about before?
Yeah.
Going back to that list of the things like
Mhm.
stop, take a deep breath,
Yeah, yeah.
count to 10. What are the things? Take a walk outside, right? Go put baby in the crib where we know they'll be safe and they can cry and it's okay. And I'm going to go well, walk around my house for a minute or
Mhm.
turn some music on or whatever the thing is, make that phone call to a friend to say, "Hey, I need you to talk me down right now," and just calling them back to that front part of their brain,
Mhm.
which wants the best, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
want the best. That's our intention.
Mhm.
It's that emotional part of our brain that can take over and make us do the thing and we didn't want to do. How many times do you hear the story of emotions raged, we hit or did whatever, and then the person comes back, "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that, I didn't
Yeah,
mean to do
yeah.
that," right?
Yeah.
We weren't in
Mhm.
control with that frontal lobe. We
Yeah.
allowed that midbrain, that emotional part, to guide every physical action we were taking.
Yeah, yeah. No, that I mean, again, it just makes a lot of sense because, I look back and yeah, I have some parent get right, and I think, I mean, one of my kids was a late to potty train.
Yeah.
And I just remember one, I took it personally, and I
Yes.
was like, okay, what I tell new parents two things. One, I say bedtime takes a long time for a long time. Um,
That's good. That's
but then number two is don't take it personally, and it's impossible not to take it
don't take it
personally.
personally.
But and like what I recognize now was like, oh, I was judging. I was still in my own work based on whether or not my son was doing what I thought he should have done. And everybody told me he'll figure it out. And you know what? He figured it out.
I
It was
mean,
fun.
yeah.
And yeah, he's great. But like it was just so. But again, I took this personally, and then I would act in a way because I was personally offended at myself, right? Bad at myself that raise my voice and do other things that I didn't want to do in this moment because I wasn't there, and I did know. And I mean, again, you just learn these skills over time of like, oh,
Yeah.
um, I'm I'm in this place, and then being okay that yeah, I have to calm down instead of what I want to do is take control, right? And what I have to learn how to do is that when I get there is like, okay, I'm upset. We'll being upset. What I do about it matters, right? How do I go through this process of doing this? And then our kids, right? When they get escalated and we get escalated, and he really have to be bad.
Yeah.
Somebody has to be the adult, and hopefully it's the adult.
Yeah.
Um, and then one thing I learned, was, it takes 20 minutes to like a kid to calm down, to reset. It's actually, and probably a lot of adults too, to actually, if you get
Yeah.
there, to come all the way back down. And I remember, all right, you get 5 minutes or, like whatever it
Right,
is.
right,
And
right,
then,
right.
and then we'll do we re-escalate.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
don't see it,
Yeah.
like,
I ain't doing this time.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just even having a little bit of that knowledge of like, oh, when they had a tantrum, they need 20 minutes to reset, and
Yeah.
that's just to be a human. It's like
To be human.
just like,
Yeah.
and I want them to experience consequences, and consequences matter, right? They need to learn what's right, wrong, and all that other sort of stuff. But it is just parenting is such a weird, crazy journey, and you may or may not have had a good model. All of us had an incomplete model, right? I mean,
Right.
whether my parents were married. Those are the two parents I know. Some people have step parents or different sort of things. But you're so limited as to what you know.
Yeah.
So for what you guys are doing to expand, like, have you thought about it this way, or what about this,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
give people a different model?
Yeah.
And like you said, and if I do believe that people are doing the best that they could
Mhm.
with what they have, um, I mean, I know I've talked with people and it's like, well, I raised my voice, but my parents beat me. I'm not going to
Yeah.
need that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, hey, you've come a long way.
Come a long way.
Now this, we still got to address this.
Really proud of you.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah, yeah.
celebrate that, but
Yeah, let's
yeah.
let's keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that's part of the journey that they're in. And I guess that would be part of what we need to do is to help people walk along that road in this cycle of trauma. I think I mean, if as I think about, I have never used the term like domestic violence culture, but I really do. I mean, we're in this culture
Mhm.
of a lot of trauma. I don't think a lot of people understand what it did to them and what it does to
Right.
other people. And so,
Yeah, I'm still surprised how many people are not familiar with just the term ACEs or adverse childhood experiences and what that does lead to just increasing our risk for medical problems, for drug and alcohol abuse, for landing ourselves in jail, for all kinds of things. And all that is because of some of the things that happened to us as little people, right? As children who are still learning, who are still growing, their brains are not fully developed. And so the other thing I try to do, again, going back to this concrete, like when we think about, okay, it takes 20 minutes to calm down, you know what? Have a 20-minute playlist that you have created before the thing happens. And you're just in your mind when you feel this, you're just like, oh, I'm ready for this, right? So being prepared because you knew this would be a barrier, you knew that you would have this kind of a day and you would lose your self control. And your goal is to create a peaceful home, right? And so you're like, oh, I was already prepared. I knew this was coming. Let me get my phone. I'm going to play the 20-minute calm playlist, right? And we literally in my house we had a playlist that was called Calm. And so we would try to like play that. And it wasn't because I'm such a good parent, it's because I've been in the same spot you have been in and I didn't want to keep doing that thing. And I think being honest with each other is so huge because how many people have you shared that with of like your journey with the body training? And you probably see like a release of this guilt. And again, it's just like, oh, I thought I was the only one, or I thought you were perfect. I never thought you would have. You're a bastard. But it's just like it automatically opens us up to help each other because now all your kids are potty trained. So now you can look back and you're like, let me tell you what I learned. And I think our society just, we don't have as many multi generational relationships in place. So we don't have as many people who are a step ahead, which goes back to this cultivation of our social network to intentionally, a very worthy goal is to intentionally seek out mentors, like parenting mentors, who is a step ahead in your life. And you're like, wow, I really like their style. We all have a different style, right? Really like their style. I'm going to seek relationship with them. I'm actually going to ask them if they can be someone I can call and ask parenting questions up. That's a great goal to have. And then it helps us learn from each other.
So yeah, so that was a super practical way somebody who's listening could do. It's just
Yeah.
about the who's a step in front of you,
Yeah.
right? That you could say, hey, I need help or I want help. Would you be willing to share with me? Or I could call you if I run into a challenge, you just help me think through that. That's a goal. Then you have your pathway. And then hey, agency, you could make that call, you can make the text,
Yeah.
you can do that. Um, you can do that step. And what I would tell people if you don't have if you don't think of anybody, like a lot of our local churches, I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of our local churches, I think about our church here, is like we have people who have gone through it and who care and who aren't. I mean, so go to church,
Sure.
find some
That's where
bullshit
my
generators,
mentors are. Yes, that's where I
find
have
some
those
people to be able to do,
multi-generational.
and it is okay. And I do think the shame, and then I like the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is I did something wrong. Shame is I am something wrong. And so I don't like shame. I like guilt, and that to be able to acknowledge, like, in a repentant sort of way, like I did these things, and I don't want to become this person, and laying it out on the table. One of my low parenting moments that I had to acknowledge in front of a group of people was Father's Day. This is probably 10 years ago. So my kids were probably like 6 and 3, 6 and 4. Was on the way to church. I yelled at my kids because they were just being stinkers on the back seat. But those were the I yelled at them so much that my voice sounded like I was sick. So I go to church and I'm preaching, and people are like, "Are you feeling well?" And I'm like, and so, like, I had to make, like, so I couldn't lie. It was just not a good model. But, like, being honest with people is also super
It's
uncomfortable
hard.
about this
It's
sort of
hard.
thing.
Yeah.
And so I mean, but I ended up just being like, hey, like,
This happened.
this happened. And I know the ride to church is sometimes the worst part of a week
Yeah.
for people. And so I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Apologize to my
Yeah.
kids. I did the things. Say nobody wins when daddy gets angry, like that. Nobody wins. I don't win. You all don't win. It's not a good situation. But it was like one of the moments where people were like, okay, yeah, I mean, Craig Rochelle says, we admire people for their strengths, we connect with them through their weaknesses. And I think that really part of parenting is, you don't want to overly and you don't want to embarrass your children as an example of parenting. And I try to wait. I'm a public person. I'm
That's
kids are
hard.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I also want to be real.
Yeah.
I mean, so I was in a conversation with some men a month ago, and I told the potty training thing as an example because they were feeling guilty about something their kid was or wasn't doing. I don't remember exactly what it was. It's just like no, no, no. Like there's hope here. Like
Yeah.
it's not a defining thing and it's not personal. So you gotta let those narratives kind of go. All right, I'm gonna turn the conversation to you. So
Okay.
you're pediatrician by trade,
Pediatrician.
so scientist, and so how did you get to this hope centered parenting? What was that journey like for you? Because that's not the way that most
Yeah.
pediatricians
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
So what was that journey
That's
like?
a fair question. Great question. So, I've always loved an area of pediatrics called developmental behavioral
Okay.
pediatrics. And so I did a year of that after I did my fellowship. And so when I was in practice, I really enjoyed working with peers who were in a space of like struggling through with some hard behaviors with kiddos. And the question always is this something that's really pathologic, or do we need to think about medicine, or is this something that's more environmental? And what can we do to help the most? And so I've really always loved wrestling with some of these things and in this space. And I like to say that my husband and I prayed really, really, really hard for a child, and the Lord was so good to us. We were able to adopt a little boy 20 years ago, and it was the greatest gift I've ever been given. And I will say to anyone who has an adoption story or is thinking about adoption story or fostering story, it's a hard thing to just realize, like, the world has so much brokenness.
How old was
And
he when
he was a baby, he was a baby. And, my goal is always reunification of the family. I believe so strongly that there are no mistakes when it comes to parenting and that biologically, like, I want every child I wanna do everything I can to support those biological families. But I also wanna be in the business of helping repair, right? And helping restore, and so, that has been an incredible journey for our family, and, then within 4 years, we had 3 more children. So our families been put together in all kinds of ways, and along the way, we've fostered here and there and love doing respite, and so when I had 4 children, 4 and under, I really had to reckon with the fact that here I had learned all this research and done all this talking with parents and found myself in a place where I was not as present as I needed to be. It was actually after number 3. And that was really hard, right? Because I had my goals in place for my life, right? But my primary goal really was to be a great wife and a great mom. And so I stepped out of direct patient care. I still miss it. So that's probably the driver of a lot of what I do. And was able to use a lot of the gifts that the Lord's given me in nonprofit work, in helping kind of strategically put some things together as far as initiatives around early literacy and again brain growth. And so people who are getting books in their pediatric offices. That's something that I've really been honored to be a part of, is Reach Out and Read and Dolly Parton Imagination Library and some great things like that. So for 20 years, I've been able to do a lot of those things. And then the last 7 have really been able to, you have these moments you kind of step back, you're like, okay, Lord, I see the through thread here. I see the thing that's driving, and I think one thing that the Lord has it helps me with is just always hopefulness is just ingrained in me, and I think in large part because of the way I was raised, right? And so I've always been, I would say, a purveyor of hope, without necessarily having all the language around it. And so it just became a natural fit that this would be something when I really started looking again at these 2000 studies. I'm always one that's like work smarter, not harder. And how do we come together? How do we use resources jointly? How do we help each other? Because I really believe communities have what they need.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I really believe in the self-healing model. And you look at some communities across the globe and through the years, we're not the first ones that have been in a hard spot. When you look at Tulsa, Oklahoma, we're actually in a pretty good spot compared to 2,000 years of history and really hard stuff that had happened to communities. And so I always feel like if we can work better together and start to use again with the science of it, what I love is the common language. That at the very least of it, we can start coming around this common language of like really understanding what each other's goals are, understanding how we can be pathways for each other or how we can help others find pathways. And then with this willpower piece, really helping people identify within their own lives, like what are the things that build your willpower? What are the things that are draining? So I feel like as far as costs go, it's an incredibly low cost intervention, if you will, which I'm also all about that. How do we use interventions but not break the bank, right? Like, do we use what we have to do the most good? So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And I really believe the Lord works through his people. I mean, you mentioned church, right? And so I just think like we are here for each other for a purpose, right? And so I really think when I work a whole lot with teenagers, and what I see is just a real lack of a sense of purpose. And I think we as the adults have to own what we've kind of created here, and we have to help remedy it. So I always steal a line from a favorite psychologist of mine, Dr. Kathy Cook. And she tells kids, you were created on purpose, with purpose, for a purpose, right? Like nobody's here as a mistake.
Yeah.
And we're all part of this big story,
Yeah.
right? So, really helping these kids identify, which goes back to science, like, what are you here for? What are you, how did the Lord put you together? What are you good at, right? We're all good at something. And I think we've gotten into this real reductionist thinking, and, our educational systems are created on like, okay, we want everyone to make this grade and be good at these things. And, what about the really creative kids who are just great at throwing pottery or, painting, and like, where do they fit? And how do we really nurture that? And even within the church, how do we nurture some of these giftings that people have that may not be monetized or may not be glorified in a typical educational system? But how can we really embrace these things and help each other?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that is so. I mean, again, I've got my 2 boys are very different, and so and yet, yeah, it's like genius in both of them, right?
Yeah.
In very different
Yes.
ways,
Yeah.
and so it's yeah, but that they need and I see that, I want them to believe that, and then I think about, yeah, I mean, the community and these kids who don't have great
Yeah.
parents or maybe only have one parent or whatever their life situation looks like or they've experienced these traumas that have been out of their control and or I mean maybe some even in their control that
Yeah.
like man they feel the self-defeat that okay they to build up this belief system,
Yeah.
this key thing that we one of the images that's been in my brain is like our brain is like this big jar with marbles, right?
Yeah.
And like a lot of them are dark marbles that we put in there. And like, how do you like if you're gonna get it at, like I think especially people who've had these ACEs, these
Yeah.
traumas, like it's just a lot of darkness, right? There's a few
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
marbles, and it's like, no, I got to take one out, I got to put one in,
Yeah.
because those dark marbles
Yeah.
will keep coming
You
back.
have to
So I
put
kind
like
of,
5 in to take it. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
I've got to put in those belief of like who you are, and what you're
Yeah.
about, and what you could be, to just remind that. So one of the things you said is you've kind of had this like kind of hope disposition your whole life, like
Yeah.
that just kind of came from the way that you were raised is what I got.
Yeah.
So what was key in your parents' raising that helped you to enable you to have a hope disposition?
I think that's a really great question. And I wish I had a really like succinct here it is, because then I would just do it again for my kids, right?
Yeah.
But the things that I think are so important are I always had roots in my family. I've always had roots. I was always surrounded by people who loved me and I
Yeah.
knew cared about me. So I never had to doubt or question, do you love me?
Mhm.
Am I here on purpose? Do I belong
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
And so I think this real sense of belonging,
Mhm.
I've never been without that.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important that we make sure all of our kids are growing up with that. That you were you were always wanted. You were always part of who we are. I don't know what we would do without you, because you're
Mhm.
so integral
Yeah,
to
yeah,
our
yeah.
family unit, our church community, our youth group. Like,
Mhm.
we need you here. And so I always felt like I just kind of was needed and I had this role to play.
Okay.
And you look at some of the studies and either even the arc of history, and those kids who got up at 5 and milked the cows and help do this and like, they always knew, like, I have to do my role. I have to be part of this family. That's how we're going to function. And I think kids need that. And I think the opposite of that is what we're seeing a lot in kids who really have no responsibilities, and they just kind of get to play on their iPhone all day, or I hear, and not to pick on one thing, but I'll just give this example. A lot of kids these days don't even want to get their driver's license. I was talking to this mom, and she said, "Yeah, he doesn't even care." And I said, "Well, tell me what it looks like when you're in the car." She's like, "Well, I'm driving him where he wants to go, and he's in the back playing on his phone." I was like, "Hey, that sounds great. I don't want my driver's license anymore either." Right? Like, but my kids always knew, like, I can't wait until you get to this
Yeah.
age. It's
Yeah.
such a marker. It's something to be excited about. I'm so proud of you. We've been building in you this sense of
Yeah.
responsibility,
Yeah.
and we know that you're going to be ready for it. And we actually need you. Like, we
Mhm.
have 4 kids.
Yeah.
I need this for you, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
you can do this. You can take this next step. And so I think that was a big part of it, is just never questioning, was I loved, did I belong? And always having a role to
Yeah.
play.
Yeah.
And the sense of like, yeah, I know that I was given certain gifts that I'm now expected to use, right? I grew up in a family of faith, which was a real blessing, I feel like, because it gave me this worldview of I'm part of this bigger story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's important
Okay.
too,
Mm-hmm.
because right now, if I thought that the future of the entire earth and climate change rested on my shoulders,
Mm.
I couldn't handle it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
couldn't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm trying to tell my kids is like, yeah, we recycle and we do these things and we make wise choices and we're not wasteful.
Yeah.
Um, and that is doing our part to take care of the earth,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? As we've always been
Mm-hmm.
expected to do from the time of creation. We, even in the garden, Adam had a job,
Yeah.
Eve had a job. So we always had this job and that's what we're doing. So reframing big world problems,
Yeah.
I think, in ways that kids can actually take a small step in being part of solving instead of just dealing with these existential crises that there's no answer for.
I mean, that's really, I'm thinking now of, yeah, just there seems to be a gloom state that I would just describe what's going on in the world in a way of like there's just chaos. There's I mean, we're the what happened in Iran just over this past weekend, like there's a sense of out of
Mhm,
controlness, like
mhm,
you don't know what the news will bring, and most of the time it feels like the news is bad, right? I mean, this
mhm.
gloom state is what gloom culture, right? Well, let's talk about
Yeah.
culture, right? This gloom culture. And so yeah, we need these okay, I have agency. There's something I can do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I can reach out to this person, or I could say this thing, or I could do these things. I could
Yeah.
recycle. I could
Yeah.
I can contribute,
Yeah.
but it's not my whole responsibility. I can't solve the world's problems. I can't solve the countries. I have a hard enough time solving some of my own problems, but I can contribute. I can make a difference in this way. And it makes me, I mean, as you were talking, it made me think of Fuller Youth Institute. They've done some research on the three big questions. They talk about it with young adults, but it's really true everywhere. It's most intense in our young adulthood. It's questions of identity. Who am I?
Who am I?
Questions of belonging,
Mhm.
where do I fit? Who are my people? And questions of purpose. What
Why?
difference do I make?
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
And
mhm.
so as you were talking about like your this kind of rootedness, right? Belong. I mean, that was the first thing you talked about. I always felt like I belonged.
Mhm.
And then yeah, you transitioned like to purpose. Like
Yeah.
I felt like that, I could contribute. There's something to
Yeah.
do that I had something. And then this identity, this participating in this
Yeah.
bigger story. I was like, oh, that's
Yep.
identity, belonging, and
Yep.
purpose. There it
It's
is.
all there. It's all there. And I think we take for granted that that just like seeps into our kids. And it doesn't. Like, we need to use our words, we need to use our actions,
Mhm.
and we have to be present, right?
Yeah.
So, I always ask kids, what's the Lord breaking your heart over? What is it
Mhm.
that you're kind of struggling to understand right now? Or what are the big questions? And let's just say, for instance, food insecurity,
Yeah.
right? I mean, there are how many ways here in Tulsa that that child can go and be part of
Mm.
being a solution to that.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
not going to solve the whole thing, right?
yeah.
Because that's not our role to play. But they actually can walk out like, hey, I'm actually doing something
Mhm.
to be part of what I've struggled to understand, and, like, now I have words to describe it, I have a face that was in front of me, I have these emotions that I felt when I was part of it,
Yeah.
and so I think that also requires time, and so when you were talking about just, you know on the way to church and we're like, hurry, hurry. And then our kids need 20 minutes to calm down. And our
Mm.
teens' life is so full. And I think one thing that I just have to say, and this to myself, is it's a reminder all of these things as parents, it requires time and presence,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And so many things we're like outsourcing these days. And I just remind people again and again and again, no one can take your place. Like, you are the most important person
Mm.
to your child.
Yeah,
You can give them a million experiences, a million opportunities. What they want most is you present with them in their life. And so it's just a reminder to all of us, like, sign up to volunteer together,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or, take take an hour off where you just walk around the block and you just talk about the world, right? Or life or what's bothering them or just get insight into what's going on with them because our kids want us there. even when they act like they don't. And it's especially for the parent of a
Yeah,
teenager right
yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, you're living it, but it time and again, they just kind of it's like a deer, right? Like, they just kinda don't scare the deer in the woods.
Mhm.
They're there, don't give them direct eye contact,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
they're
yeah.
there, and you just gently you're just like, "Okay, tell me, who'd you sit with at lunch today?" You know?
Mhm.
And then if it feels like they're getting skittish, you're just like, "Oh, tell 'em,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah, yeah.
what's your favorite song?" Move out of that realm into another realm.
And then they'll come back at 10:30 at night
Yeah.
when you're dead
Yes, and
tired,
they wanna just
and
give
then
it
they'll come back
all,
then. Yeah, I heard somebody say that, yeah, teenagers, they give 2 messages, "Come close, stay away,"
Yes.
at the same time, and so that is, that is what part of what it is, and then you're saying something about, like, yeah, who they wanna spend time with. There was a video 10 years ago, probably maybe even longer than that, probably 15 years ago now, 'cause, they asked, like, these adults, who do if you could have anybody over for dinner, who would you have? And, some mom said Justin Bieber, so that should tell you when they, like, kind of what it was. And there was, all these famous people. And then they asked their kids, and they're like, "Can I have anybody? I can have dinner with anybody?" And they're like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Probably my mom and my dad." And then they showed the video of the mom and the dad, watching, and like
Yeah.
just the shock of like, I mean, the shock to the system of, yeah, like what a privilege it is to be a parent. And Andy Stanley, it's his wife, Sandra Raby, who said, "The days are long, but the years are short." And I think that is, I'm getting to this place again with my 16-year-old of like it's ending, right? Like
Yeah.
I know that it's ending of that just there. And there's already been a change because he's driving and
Mhm.
thankfully he wanted to do that. That was a goal.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
accomplished it. Um, all of those kinds of things. But it's like, I mean, I he came home at 8. I mean, I didn't see him till like 8:30 at the end of the night because 'cause he's got some stuff, and it was just and he's like, "It's good to finally see you," or I was like, I was like, "We
Yeah.
never saw each other for like 10 seconds this morning as
Yeah.
we were
Yeah.
on our way
On the way
around,"
out the door.
and so, yeah, be able to have those times and be able to make time and to I think one of the struggles with parents is we're humans, right? And that we do have these goals. And so, probably for all of us, okay, it's great to have these professional goals. It's great to have these personal goals, and we need to have these things. And then, yeah, what are the parenting goals? And if it is, I want to have a meaningful conversation with my kid once a week or whatever it might look like.
Mhm.
We need to make sure we
Yeah.
do these things. And then I'm a big believer in village. I mean,
Mhm.
that is
Mhm.
my kids have great grandparents who take an interest and do different things and find a different way. Other people in church, to have that extra village because I know that I think sometimes as parents we feel like we have to be everything,
Right. Right.
and we can be a vital thing, but we cannot
Can't be
be
everything.
everything.
Yeah.
And so that's just such a good thing for me to just as a dad to being like, you know what? I'm not trying to farm out too unnecessarily,
Yeah.
uh, but I know, like, our youth director here, his name's Ethan. Ethan is gonna be able to say some things better. They'll hear better than they'll hear from me,
Yeah.
and they'll need him when they're 22 and they have a question, to be
Yeah.
able to come back,
Absolutely.
and so part of what these resources, these pathways to be
Yeah.
able to do, yeah, it's just I don't know, I'm just fascinated.
Yeah, and, to piggyback on that, one thing that I'll do with teenagers sometimes is ask them to and especially my own kids, like, "Tell me the 5 adults that you could trust or you could call anytime for anything."
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
my kids have 5 easily, right? It could be you say 2. Who are the 2 adults in your life that 2 in the morning, you need help, who are you calling, right? And it
Yeah.
gives you insight because if they really can't name anyone,
Mhm.
we have a problem, right? We
Yeah.
need that. We got to work on that. And then when they name, I say, okay, do you have their cell phone number in your phone?
Yeah, like
And so, yeah, do you know how to get a hold of them? And so, and if they say, well, actually, no, I'm like, okay, give me, because sometimes they'll say, oh, I know I can call you, Miss Amy. Like, okay, do you have my number in your phone? Let's put
yeah.
my number in your phone. So I think it's so important, like you said, for our kids to have these people and for us as parents or even as mentors in their life
Mhm.
for us to be saying to them, like, "You can always call me. I'm always here for you." And those periods, like, who are these people that you're leaning on? And for them to know, like, "Yeah, you have my permission." I That's a great list. I'm so
Yeah.
happy to hear that you choose well, right?
Yeah, yeah,
People
yeah,
that
yeah.
you know
No,
you
good,
can go
good.
to. And I fully support that, right?
Mhm.
We have a couple of youth ministers, and I would trust them with any advice they give my kids, right? So for my kids to know, like, absolutely, if you want to go to them with something, that's fantastic, and they're going to point you in the right direction. You can trust them.
And I think that that's just really probably good exercise for all of us to
Yeah.
think about who are the people. It makes me think of, there's a ministry in town, Stand in the Gap, and
Yes.
they do a lot of mentoring. I mean,
Yes.
it's like kind of what they consider modern day orphans, and who in your who in your phone or is not paid to be a part of your life, and they want to be some of those people who are paid to be a part of your life, and just say know that they can count on these folks, and I really, I do think that, because there are people, some people are in the thick of parenting, and there's a whole other journey of like parenting, your adult children or other such stuff. You're always a parent or grandparent, but I think there are people that it's like, okay, um, part of parenting is not just your own kids. It's being a part of a culture that sees that young
Yeah.
people need guidance and need somebody to believe in them, that they just need those resources to help out. And again, not to, I mean, again, it comes down to what is the goal of a parent.
Yep.
And I'm now thinking, okay, what is the goal of a parent? The parent is to prepare somebody to thrive without you, right? I mean, because that's, to be able to thrive in their own world, in their own environment, without you being there. I mean, that's what we want to create a culture so that our kids, they leave us, they want to come back, but they also want to come back. I guess maybe that they
Right,
could
right,
drive
right, right,
without you, but
right,
they
right.
want to be with
It's an
you.
openness.
An openness. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. And I really do. And that's what I want for, the kids in our community and other such stuff. And I think there's a lot of, I wonder, okay, now I'm about to, this hope center parenting. I am going to say there's a lot of fear-centered parenting.
Mhm,
And some of it is reasonable fears.
mhm, mhm.
We got a kid who's driving. I'm afraid of what somebody will happen on the road to him, and maybe from him, but to him, right? I mean, I don't have any daughters, but if I had some daughters, I'd be afraid of what
Mhm,
somebody might do. Afraid of what somebody might do to my sons. But like, there are some and then also there's my own internal fears, right? I'm fear of failing them. I'm a
mhm,
fear of
mhm,
saying the wrong thing.
mhm,
Um, and so I won't say anything. I'm afraid to say anything. So, like, if I'm a fear-centered parent, how do I go from here to a
mhm,
folk-centered parent?
mhm,
Because this
mhm,
is my thesis: is that most
mhm,
people are here.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and the fear or anxiety driven, and guilt driven, but yeah, to become hope driven, I think part of it, is recognizing what we control and what we don't control.
Okay.
Which again is where I feel like, for me personally, like my faith is so incredibly important,
Yeah.
and recognizing, like, from a biblical worldview, any sense of control I have is actually a false sense,
Mhm.
right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
we
yeah,
the
yeah.
things we actually
Control's an
control
illusion. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and not very many, right? So recognizing that a lot of times that fear and that anxiety, those are bubbling up from this sense of like a control or lack
Mhm.
thereof
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as we kind of open up our child's world a little bit. So we may have gone from this space of like controlling all the variables in their life
Yeah.
to now they're moving into a different phase or thinking we're responsible for all the variables. A lot of parents I work with, they think that they do. I'm like, actually, you don't get to control these things, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
And so helping them stand back and start to recognize, like,
Mhm.
oh, wow,
Yeah.
I can take a lot of that off my shoulders and give that to the Lord because I actually don't control all of these factors and how beautiful that is that the Lord loves us so much. Like he loves our children more than we do. I
Yeah,
always
yeah,
say
yeah.
that too, right? Like if we read the Bible and believe it, he loves our kids more than we do.
Yeah.
And so when I can rest in that and know like he has their best interest in mind when I don't even know what their best interests are, right? Like as
Mhm.
an
Yeah, yeah,
earthly
yeah.
parent, sometimes he does. And so allowing him to carry that control, which he does, whether we allow it or not. And just for us to come alongside and be able to recognize
Mhm.
our role as caretakers and like we're nurturing and to focus our energies where they actually can do
Yeah,
good
yeah,
and can
yeah, yeah.
matter, right? And whether they will gain traction versus all of this energy that is wasted, if you will,
Mhm,
on the worry or the anxiety.
mm,
And some of that is kind of learning to let go of some of those
yeah,
things. Um, that's what I find in drilling down with some people is that it often is rooted in this false sense of control.
oh, yeah.
And then so of course I would be riddled with anxiety if I lived each day thinking that what I did moment to moment was going to make or break this deal, right?
Yeah,
Like how
yeah,
could I take a step forward?
yeah,
But I live each day knowing like I am taking each step just in relation with the
mhm,
Lord and as he directs, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm like in constant communication here. All right, Lord, what do I do now? Right?
yeah,
And there are for sure moments where my husband and I will be like, you know what? Let's sleep on this. Let's pray about this. There's something with, we have a 17-year-old son and he's driving and he has missed curfew a couple times. And here's the other rub. Like as parent, we're two individuals that come in with different
yeah,
ideas,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So like what sometimes we're like, you know what? Let's just let's just rest on this tonight.
Mhm,
Let's just give it to the Lord. Let's have another conversation with him. Let's find out where his heart is.
yeah,
And then we can come in with consequences, right? But we don't always have to be like, the minute they walk in that door, like, boom, sometimes it can be like, well, you're late. Go get to bed. Let's talk about it
we will
tomorrow.
address
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Let's
yeah,
rest this
yeah,
tomorrow after we've all had time to think about it.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, I just,
And what a gift that is to him to be able to see things that even down the road of being a parent, like, hey, so I'm not gonna make an angry response. I'm gonna make a honest one.
I hope.
It's not to punish, it's to restore and to
Yeah.
understand and that kind of stuff. It's
And
really
again, go
good.
back to what our goal is for him, which is obedience to us.
Mhm,
Like when we set a rule, like we expect obedience. And also we can give him the why, right? We don't have to all the time, but we want to keep you safe, right?
yeah,
We wanting you to get home and get sleep for your body. These are the reasons this is important to us. And here's the rule and here's the consequence. And then we're pretty much like, and let's move on, right?
That's yeah, that
Yeah.
is, and I do think this idea of and then again in an anxious world or in a fear world, everything is amplified, right?
Mhm.
And so if we're anxious parenting or we're fear parenting, then little things become big things.
Yeah.
And then big things become out of control things because we think we have to control them. And so I do like this idea of like, okay, if we're gonna have this different way of being, I'm not gonna respond out of my anxiety if you're, I'm gonna respond out of the values, the goals, the things that we share. And then we're gonna make this way forward together. There's another book, The Cost of Control. Have you read The Cost of Control?
Mhm.
Ah, Sarah Miller, I believe it's her name. It is great.
Okay.
She's a pastor, and so yes, it's a great book. When I preached on like the cost of control, I bet people are like, yes. So,
So
and she says
the
you can have control, but it's at a high cost. And so it's like you want to control everything in your child's life. Okay, great. You could squeeze the life out of them, right? Like
Right.
you could do
Yeah.
that. You want to I mean, again, you can have control, but it's at a high cost, and again, we're not designed for control and all these things. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, for me, it is this. I think having this faith, um, be because he lives who they face tomorrow, right?
Mhm.
That I do think that for me, I often say whether it be somebody going through grief or going through these challenges, I don't know how people do it without faith.
Mhm.
And I know people do, but I don't know how they do it and do it well without faith because I just think this grounding of all of these things, the identity, belonging, purpose, the hope. I mean, because of that, I mean, it's like okay, right? Tomorrow can be better than today,
Right.
because
Right.
I believe in the Lord of tomorrow,
Yeah.
and that He's ahead of us in that way. So, all right, I'm going to ask you just some random, actually,
Okay.
top of your mind, sort of stuff. So, let's talk about Tulsa. What's your favorite place to eat in Tulsa area?
Oh. Okay. Can I say two? Because I
okay,
love going to Amelia's. Love, love, love. And D'Alessandro's. Just we've had so many great family meals there.
okay,
I love that place.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. Yeah, somebody's coming from out of town, and you're gonna show them around Tulsa. What are a couple of the hot spots that you're gonna go?
Oh, gathering place.
okay,
I love walking around the gathering place. I cannot even believe how gorgeous it is. And I don't know why. I don't meet somebody for coffee over in what's the building called that has the gelato in the bottom of it? The lodge. Yes. Why am I not meeting people for coffee over there like every day? It's the most gorgeous space that we can all walk into anytime. I love it. That and then just oh man, so many places. So just Brookside in general, I think some about energy.
Yeah. What you do work with various nonprofits. Brag on a nonprofit for me.
Okay, I have to brag on Lilyfield. Full disclosure, I'm on the board. Lilyfield is a fantastic faith-based organization that believes that all children should grow up in a nurturing, safe family. And so we have a spot, a building. Our location is North Peoria, not too far from Oasis. And we help recruit and support foster families, but we also help families who are just going through hard times. Like anything we can do, whether it's parenting classes, help them make ends meet, do teen support groups. So lots of great things happening at Lilyfield. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
love them.
Awesome. Awesome. If I was to come over to your house, what would be the most unusual item in your house?
I have a lot of unusual items in my home. I feel like that's kind of my calling card for people who know me. So probably the mastodon tusk. That is a very large fossil that my dad helped find a home for. It came out of the Mississippi riverbed. I'm from Mississippi, and I love fossils, rocks, bones, taxidermy, all of the above. I love
You
it.
like dead animals in your house?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
People know my love language is giving a nice old vintage taxidermy a safe place to live for the rest of its life. At least the rest of my life, and then it'll be passed on.
I'm gonna say,
Yeah.
yeah, your kids are gonna be like, you don't have just random dead animals around your house? So,
Kids will come in my living room and they're like, "Is this a museum?" I'm like, "Well, it could be." But I have always believed, I love Paul David Tripp when it comes to parenting stuff. And, he says, like, you can barely wake up in the morning without bumping into the Lord. And then he says, and then pointing those things out to your children. So I just believe like there's no greater artist than the ultimate creator, the master creator. And when you look at just feathers and you just marvel at the colors and all the things. So I love that. Yeah.
all right. So yeah, you mentioned okay. So yeah, who do yeah, I mentioned some books to you, but who do I need to read or what podcast do I need to listen to?
Okay, I mentioned Dr. Kathy Cook. She's written several books, Teens and Screens, all kinds of good ones. I love her. I mentioned Paul David Tripp. He's also my favorite. And he has a book. I have to remember the name. It's like 12 Principles for Parenting. Love those. Um, I I love Carl Trueman if you want to get really nerdy and just like the arc of psychology of like how we've landed at this current moment because some of us are I love just understanding the why or whatever the thing is. And so it's just helped me kind of keep things in perspective of like why we are landing at this cultural moment right now. And so I enjoy reading him. Yeah. Yeah. He's a good.
When I was a kid, my parents apparently asked why a lot because they got me the big book of Tell Me Why,
I love that.
which is yeah, I think yeah, that's like so as I think about like the things that the things that were communicated to me or the things that I know about myself, right? You don't even think about, like yeah, I'm a curious person, so yeah, the big book of Tell Me Why. When I was in preschool, people called me Mr. Sunshine because I was always just happy, like I had this disposition, and those things are like these
I
are
love
both like I'm a very curious
that.
person, and I do have this like kind of sunny disposition. And again, it's like just like, yeah, that was 2-year-old Aaron, 4-year-old Aaron, all the way through, as we do. So, but yeah, I just love it. How many questions? How many why questions did I have to ask my parents before they're like, we have to get you a book?
Yeah, here's the book. That'll answer everything. But you know what? I love that. And just circling back on what we're talking about, like kudos to your parents and my parents and so many parents who dive into that, right? And then they call that what they see and they love that about you, right? So the parents listening, like keep pointing out what those little quirky or fun or unusual things are about your child and just love those things with your child, right? Like if you're not pointing those things out, somebody else is going to tell them that's not a good thing or they should stop doing that thing, right? But it's our job to like be scientists of our kids, right? So to understand our kids fully and to love everything that we see and help them because they're everything about us can either go in this direction or this direction, right? Like our perseverance can make us stay with something too long, or it can help us get a job done, right? So, like, whatever that thing is in your child, help them just turn it towards the good and point those things out with our kids. And okay, podcast, can I just give a shout out? It actually they've stopped producing it, but it's archived. Strong Women by Sarah Stone Street is so good because it has conversations with authors and all kinds, and she really she builds out this idea of what it means to be a strong woman and that it can be so much more multifaceted than what in the world they've been telling us to.
Okay. All right.
Love it.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's the beautiful thing about podcasts is, yeah, you can go back and be like, oh, that one's good.
I know.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, and yeah, your podcast. I've listened to a lot.
Oh, okay.
Actually,
I will
yeah.
say,
I love conversations that I've been hearing with people around town. I like.
yeah.
We have so many treasures in our
Well,
community.
that's what I love about. I mean, that's why I started this was because I just thought there are just great people. There are that are doing amazing
Yeah.
things that are needed, and can I help amplify and just get a louder voice and just broadcasts that are going out. So it's a lot of fun. And then yeah, and I think that Tulsa is just. I love being in Tulsa because it's just the right size for me.
It's perfect.
That it's just like, yeah, it's small, but it's big. And, I think I heard there are 7,000 nonprofits in Tulsa. A lot of it is of churches. But, there's just so much that is going on and, those kinds of things. So I'm going to give you a magic wand. You get to solve a problem in the world. What are you solving?
I want every child to be in a loving, safe home. That is the
Okay.
problem. I have it. I have a little prayer board, and that has been on a sticky note that there be 0 children who are in state's custody because states were never designed to raise children, right? Families were. So if every child could be in a safe and nurturing family, and the state's job could be done with child rearing, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, systems,
Systems were never designed. They're
yeah.
doing the best they can, and I love my friends who are in child welfare. Love them. They are doing the hardest work in our community, and I just wish that they would just have to get new jobs because they were not needed anymore.
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
Ah,
Let's see. What other questions? What is your favorite word?
oh, okay. Besides hope,
Yeah.
glimmer. Have you heard the notion of looking for glimmers throughout our day?
Mm.
So we train the brain to look for the things that we want to see. And so if your child is coming home every day and your first question is like about those friends who are not sitting with them at lunch or that teacher who is always giving them a bad grade, you're going to train them to be looking for when people are mean to them or when a teacher gives them a bad grade. So instead, to train our brains to look for the glimmers, and it's just, using gratitude, right? That's another favorite of mine. But, send them out the door. Hey, when you get home today, I can't wait to hear for a moment when you were able to help somebody today at school or when somebody was kind to you and you didn't expect it. And so there's a word for those in some circles. It's called glimmers.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, we do like, yeah, what are 3 things you're grateful for at the dinner
Yes.
table? And you just having this opportunity to just kind of share, like, okay, what you have to know, yeah, oh, gotta come up with something,
You
right?
need to be looking for it
Yeah,
or
yeah,
on the lookout for the things I'm
yeah,
grateful for today.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. And glimmer, I think that's a fun word as well. Some where let's see, what else do I want to try on my list? That's okay. What kind of coffee are you like? A specific coffee?
For some, I am married to a man who is obsessed with coffee and always has been. He actually spent a semester in Italy in college, and I say that our coffee maker is my fifth child because it has its own little area in the house and its own water supply, and so he's a huge coffee person. I use community coffee grinds in the morning and just brew my own little pot, and
Okay.
I'm totally content with that. But if I am really wanting an experience, because I'm more an experienced person, then I go out to Not Your Average Joe on Broken Arrow. Have you been there?
Yep.
Love, love, love Not Your Average Joe. So adults with disabilities, it provides meaningful work for them. We like to say adults with special abilities because that's really what they have.
Yeah,
And so it just brightens my day. So
Okay.
sometimes I'll go get coffee from them.
I'm sure.
Yep.
I'm sad. I've been there one time. I had somebody who told me
Yeah.
about it. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was fun.
It's great. That's a great nonprofit.
Go out there. So I mentioned my friend. I said my friend because I feel like I know he doesn't know me. Steve Cuss. I think on his podcast he does these. He calls them the goblet of questions, and he ends with this question: is tell me about a time when recently when you felt most fully loved.
Ah, I've made it through this whole time without crying. Um, most fully loved. Hmm. That's hard. Okay. Because I am incredibly blessed. I go through my days surrounded by love in so many ways. And that is such a blessing. I would say we were just recently in New Orleans. We love New Orleans. In fact, we're taking a group down to do some mission work in another week. And we've gone every year since Katrina, really important to us. So we were in New Orleans, we were in an art gallery. And I love art. I mentioned I love beautiful things, and to me, beautiful things take all kinds of forms. And so my husband was there with me, our kids were there, and he he just he understood why I loved the art that I was surrounded by in the moment. And I feel like he joined me in that. And he even said, like, I can see where parts of your love for your dad, he was no longer with us, he passed away a few years ago, like some of that is even part of this love that you have for what you're seeing right now. And I was kind of teary in the moment, and then for him to see like all the things I wasn't saying, yeah, he gets me. We've been together for 30 years. Yeah, yeah. And so that was nice to feel fully loved by him in that moment. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. So if people want to you're available to meet with groups.
I always tell people you can find my phone number pretty easily in this town. But yeah, you can reach me through Hope Driven Parenting on Instagram or Facebook. And I'm happy to figure out a way that we can work together, whether it's just pointing you to some of our resources. Like every month, we produce a great carousel of books. So we love using books to teach kids hope. It's so great when you have a hard thing you're trying to teach your kid,
Yeah.
get a book and read about that book character, right? And then you can live it out through someone who's one degree away from you. So we have great resources like that we connect people to. And yeah, happy to come on site and do workshops with parents, and love being in churches, especially. I feel like at the root of so much of what we do is our faith. So
Awesome. Okay. All
thanks
right.
for having me
Well,
today.
great. Yeah, not you. Yes, yes, absolutely.
We continue to be learning a ton about Tulsa, about some of the people that are making Tulsa great, and just some of the great things that are happening here in our city and in our state. And I'm so thankful for Amy. She'd love to come out and connect with you to help people to go through the science of hope as it relates to parents. And so I'd love for you to connect with Amy. We're looking forward to some great conversations coming up here on the Tulsa Neighbor podcast. So make sure you like, subscribe, get the word out, share this episode if it was good for you, because I know it's been good for me. Thank you very much.